In this real-side experience, I would be observing the activities of another individual, evidently then what he was doing and what would transpire in his experience, wherever and whenever in creation it was taking place, was something that made sense for my personal self to be shown, or that it was something that would be of a benefit for others' awareness speaking, as having recollected the real side experience, so it would be a given that I would write it down and share it, and that others would have the chance to hear. For as our true being state is this real awareness, as this real awareness is a part of the isness, then that this isness is everything, so it follows that all real awareness is actually this same overall isness everything reality, an isness reality that animates through all created consciousness as it effects into all the variety of form and body type. And although the isolated, disconnected from real awareness isness, personal secondary selves may consider themselves as separate from everything else, for from a simulated perspective this would indeed appear to be so, it is, as I said, one overall isness reality animating through it all the consciousness constructs. Their created design of ideas are available then to this isness reality, to the real awareness that we all actually are, and can be shown, made available to the created personal selves, any idea of any consciousness, any situation, as experienced through any body vehicle, we can be shown on the real side. Oftentimes, we are interacting directly in the simulated situations. Other times, such as in this experience, we can simply observe from this real awareness overview position. As such, we are aside from the simulation. We do not impact or affect it in any way, and likewise it has no bearing on our simulated self. As I said, I was observing the experience simulation of another, and this individual, who appeared very humanoid, was a male, around mid-30s, and had a particular developed consciousness, where through what he had decided, the ideas created and installed in his consciousness had effected a body form with extreme capability, in the sense that he was one able to manipulate the simulation he was in, and would be considered then by those that encountered him a masterful magic wielder. For indeed, we can program the consciousness with any ideas we decide, and we experience the corresponding effects, effecting body forms that can be of any design and ability. This is the nature of cause and effect creation. Or we can rather have the consciousness programmed by others if we agree with their ideas. And so, should we be experiencing a rather limited situation, chances are we agreed with ideas that were not exactly as they appeared to be, etc. But the main point is this: we are the deciders. Only we can install ideas to our consciousness as we create them, or agree with those as created by others, which affect then our creational positioning, body forms and circumstances. And this was the case then with this individual, a creationally powerful body form through his choice to be so. His species was never determined. I would assume him to be human based on his appearance, but can't be certain. But the real awareness impressions would provide additional details, as it can access all ideas of a consciousness through all creation, as I said. It seemed this man came from a long line of creationally powerful sorcerers or magicians, as though passed on automatically through the bloodline. Again, situations and circumstances simply decided through a consciousness, and the simulation is effected exactly as a consciousness is designed to be. This man, however, had excelled in his creational capability far more so than any of his lineage before. This would include his father, who rather than be pleased at his son's magical prowess, was in fact deeply resentful, and would determine a means of eradicating his son's capability, to render him as just an average, typical, mundane human. Using his magical abilities, so it was that the father was able to isolate and as though splinter off an aspect of his son's simulated, created self, and this, it seems, rendered the son powerless. We often hear of the term fragmented soul aspects, soul retrieval, and so forth, as though one can lose a part of their created self and be lessened consequently. Again, everything that transpires experience-wise is by our choice and decision. The ideas we create or agree with, and so, should such an occurrence take place, we either have inadvertently decided this to be, perhaps through some practice or dabbling in some magical art or other, or we have extended agreement to another that they have the option to make this happen, as no one can impact our experience in any way unless we agree that they can. And sometimes, as we extend agreement to others, especially if it is agreement to another's power over us, this can be expressed in various ways, and we can have unknowingly allowed then the individual to be able to impact our experience in all manner of adverse ways. And once agreement is secured, the idea incorporated into the consciousness, there it remains, irrespective of how many lifetimes go by, and how we may be unconscious of its presence now, always effecting the potentiality that at any moment all the individuals that we have extended agreement to their power over us throughout our lifetimes can suddenly feature and take advantage of these agreements in the consciousness. For a personal self-immersed individual with no interest or intent placed with the ears is in full agreement with the consciousness then and all the idea agreements it comprises of, the complete effect of their consciousness, and mostly unconscious of its construct at that, until, say, the individual begins a process of effacing the self and releasing these agreements, which unshackle them from the effect potentialities they constantly present as. But anyway, this man, whose father had fragmented part of his created self and rendered him absent of his previous magical ability, evidently through agreement extended that allowed that his father could do such, he and all his lineage or bloodline had decided to be as powerful magically as they were, but it was dependent on a complete mastery and control of every aspect of their created self, all the body vehicles, the astral, causal, mental, and etheric, as though a laser focus was required that had all the body vehicles in a check, which ensured the individual could wield this developed ability. Generally, most people are generating thoughts, emotions, etc., unchecked and unregulated, and as these ideas are produced via the various body vehicles, so as we create these ideas, so the corresponding body vehicles will be generating and having experiences that reflect these ideas on the various life levels in accordance. The various body vehicles can be having their own individual lives, experiences, and relationships with others on the various life levels, as the average individual is not only unaware of these other body aspects, but undisciplined in controlling them, whereas ultimately the idea is to ensure the intent placed with the ears, the recognition of it is so through all body vehicles, a focus that incorporates the entirety of all aspects of the created self, being in the nowness of the real awareness, as opposed to allowing the body vehicles to spew forth endless thoughts and emotions that all will be effecting into something, will affect their nature on the life levels they are associated with, and eventually filter through to effect on the physical level. And as these other vehicles may be leading their own lives, as they rather are left unregulated, it stands to reason a body vehicle could find itself captured, displaced, and may require a retrieval, etc. But in the case of the man I was observing, it was more a case that the father had the ability to cause the son to be unable to maintain this laser focus of a magical intent through one of his body vehicles, which, as I said, had the result of rendering him absent of his abilities. But additionally, because all the body vehicles had been so regulated and controlled, once this control was removed from one of them, and the exact vehicle was never determined, it was as though the body vehicle was bewildered, at a loss as to how to be and what to do, as though suddenly aimless and directionless. For I would no longer be observing the individual himself, just his particular, disassociated body vehicle and its simulated situation. It would drift about its life level as though in a trance, and would encounter various other beings, body types. Most would just ignore it. Some attempted interaction with it, but simply couldn't get much by way of a reaction. The body vehicle aspect, when engaged with, would be constantly asking of others what it was and what its name was. It would, however, alter its outward form to mimic that of the body forms of the beings who did approach and attempt to engage with it. At one point, a group of curious beings, their body types having the appearance of pink blobs, lacking any kind of features or appendages of any kind, would as though take pity on the bewildered body vehicle, and take it for a ride on a kind of a boat that sailed gently along a lake. The body aspect would assume the same body type and form, but these beings were unable to assist it, as it simply asked tirelessly what its name was. However, despite the body aspect being in a state of bewilderment, it was still a body vehicle effected overall from a consciousness designed with ideas that culminated in a very powerful and magically capable individual, and this would be expressed through all body vehicles. Hence the aspect's ability to automatically shape change to mimic the forms of others, but also as it remained somewhat disconnected, in that it wasn't controlled with the former focus the individuals whose body vehicle it was had exercised previously. It eventually began to do its own thing, as it were, and as I said, that it still was as effected from an overall, very magically, powerfully constructed consciousness. It would not only make contact now with another race of beings, it would again assume the same form, and indeed become their leader, as they recognized the prudence of allowing the aspect to be so, due to its remarkable capability, and the aspect would decide to not only lead this group of beings into various battles with other races and body types, but through its incredible abilities, so the beings it was accepted as being one of would always be successful in overcoming their adversaries. Evidently, this race of beings, who looked humanoid, though of a far greater stature than the average human, giants in comparison, had the inclination and desire to battle others, but not the ability to succeed until now. My view would switch back to the individual, the man, who had lost the reins, the control of this vehicle aspect, for he had determined exactly why he had lost his ability, and now was tracking down the whereabouts of this body vehicle, learning of how it was a part of a particular race, was leading it and initiating wars with various other races. For indeed a battle was set to be waged between the giant race led by the aspect and yet another race of beings, again rather human in appearance, and it was very likely they would be defeated also, due to the aspect's unparalleled capability where warfare and being victorious were concerned. The individual, the man, seeking his unruly aspect, would make contact with this other and doomed to lose race. At first they were suspicious of him and hostile, but he ensured them of his ability to win them their war, as it were, by defeating the leader of the giant humans. They were not especially convinced, but humoured the man, and allowed him to accompany them to the battle. And so it was that the giants awaited them with their newly acquired leader, the body aspect mimicking their forms, expecting to be victorious, staring down the army of smaller humans that approached. But then the individual, whose aspect it was, came forth, and the body vehicle didn't even recognize that it was a part of this individual that now advanced, until he came into a closer proximity to the body vehicle, which then seemed to absorb into him. The giants looked on in shock as their leader was seemingly assimilated into this man, until it was no more, and absent of their powerful new leader, they immediately surrendered, as they were relatively harmless, without the aspect's magical expertise and capability, and no longer would they continue with their want for war with other species consequently. What had happened in reality was that the man, having realized he had lost a focus through one of his body vehicles, had restored it, managing to mitigate the impact of his father, an impact that had him unable to maintain his focus from before, and now he was complete in that all his body vehicles were dancing to the tune of his intent to be magically powerful, a necessity for him and his bloodline seemingly to be able to wield their magical ability, and the body vehicle that had established its own life and chosen activities, rather running rampant and abusing its abilities, was now back and under control, and not impacting the experiences and situations of others adversely, in whichever dimension, life level, it was doing so. Not content with having his powers restored, the man now intended to confront his father. The scene would switch to where he indeed was doing so, and an almighty clash would ensue, the kind you might imagine with magic wielders, like something from a Harry Potter movie. The son was more powerful than the father, as I said, hence the father's resentment, and why he had diminished his child in the way that he had, or attempted to, and so it was that the father would be bested. However, my impressions were that these two individuals, now in the role of a father and a son, had been at odds with each other for many, many lifetimes, through various body forms in relationship to each other, friends, family, etc., and it was not only an agreement, attachment with the idea, the body form, that had them constantly in each other's experience, for as we agree to an idea, including the ideas that are the body forms of others, we experience it. We are then embroiled in each other's simulation. But the agreement also had the additional ideas of a rivalry, competition, resentfulness applied to it, and when one was seemingly greater or better than the other, so the other always was bitter, and attempted to undermine and sabotage, and this would continuously be the case over many countless lifetimes, would compound and become deeply subconsciously rooted, and so every lifetime, where they were thrust back into a shared simulation again, in whatever roles they assumed in association with each other, so they both had a tendency to pursue a magical ability of various kinds, and underlying it all was an urge to sabotage the other should one outdo the other, magical ability-wise. For we not only program the consciousness with the ideas we will experience, we program our attitudes and inclinations and behaviors, and in relation to others also, and even though we may be oblivious of how we have programmed the consciousness, we will still have the inclinations and drives that stem from its construct, as in the case of the two individuals here in this experience, the drive to always pursue magical ability, the psychic sciences, but also the motivation to want to tear each other down, and perhaps not even consciously understanding why. And there the experience would end. And who can say how long these two individuals not only will continue to feature in each other's simulation and lifetimes, but continue to behave antagonistically toward each other, resigned to their consciousness construct until they make better choices and reprogram the consciousness so they have less destructive interactions with each other.
That was cool, Kevin, because it's a very good objective view and rather exaggerated, but yes, it's gone on for who knows how long, but we all have to figure it out, and that's one way. And on the minor scales is the the business world and its competition, all competition, and personal relationships. It's the same thing. One person trying to outdo the other or be smarter or getting revenge. You see it in the movies, and it's it's all prompted. See it all the time. Something happens and somebody wants to get revenge. That's the big deal. It is prompted to many people thinking that they should, instead of better understanding what's going on. But again, they don't have the real references as to why they're here and what is taking place, and even having a purpose. The idea is to have a career in the business world and deal with that and whatever takes place there, thinking that that's how you'll survive. But no, that's a very good example of what we all go through, and to a certain point where we decide that there must be something else. So we do get the hints, and we are the biggest hint here right now, sharing with everybody. So all of these objective views are very important. And just like the one that Val read, and many that I've written and others have written too, these objective views. And it's not that we are intending to label things good or bad, right or wrong. That's not the idea, but showing what's taking place and get a better view as to what to decide to do compared to the sun shining and recognizing what all life is. Yeah, that's huge. And so you have to see it that way, because you take it a step at a time, and it is to where that, when it's gathered, when the information and knowledge that is shared is gathered too rapidly, people take it for granted, and they usually just move on to something else, looking for something more that's been created. And that's all it is, instead of taking the time to recognize what's real and what's truly being referred to. And so the old ideas of spiritual, religion, divine, and all these other things, God, saviors, masters, whatever, they don't work anymore, because people have basically been literalized with these ideas, have definitions in dictionaries and Google and everywhere else about these things. And so they look to those definitions with their mind instead of learning to see beyond all of it. So what you're experiencing there, again, in delivering, is a very good objective view. And, each person decides if they're going to see it, because, again, it's the same thing if it's an argument between two people or relationships or whatever. It's the same thing. What is the idea within the argument? And here it's on the battlefield. It eventually all winds up on the battlefield, and it could have been these two that their wives cooked him a bad dinner, and they were just upset about it, so they decided to go out and pick a fight with somebody. You never know where it starts. It's all silly stuff. But it's okay once we learn to face it and recognize it, and facing it is the best part, to learn to let it go to where you is what you already is, and recognize that. That's so cool. Yeah, so there's a brief summary. Thank you, Kevin. That was great. Thank you so much.